Hello, dear friends of the Eurovision Song Contest, and very welcome to the grand final of this year's Eurovisions International Conference. Woo! So, after two very interesting and long conference days, we are closing this year's session with an even more interesting and even longer conference day. So before we go ahead with our interviews and the roundtables, I want to introduce my dear colleagues Isabel Campello, Carla Figueira and Sofia Vieira Lopes.
Hi everybody, I hope you have a very nice afternoon with us. As well as the other days. And I'm Isabel Campillo. As Dr. Irving said, I am a singer and a vocal coach, and I'm also a doctor in ethnomusicology and a researcher in ethnomusicology as well. And without further delay, I will pass it on to my colleague and friend, Dr. Carla Figueira.
Thank you, Isabel. Hello, everyone. I'm an academic at Goldsmiths, University of London, where I teach and research in the area of international cultural relations. So it's a pleasure to be here again with all of you. I know we have a lot of content online and we have very long sessions, as my colleague Irving has already mentioned. So please do refer back to our streamings of the past Tuesday and the past Thursday. So there's a lot to watch online. So thank you again for joining. And now my colleague Sofia.
So hello, thank you for being with us in this third day of the Eurovisions Conference. So I'm Sofia, I'm a researcher in the Nova University of Lisbon. And first of all, I have to thank our team that made this possible, this conference online with these all differences between the last 2 years. So I want to thank to Irving, that pushed me to do Eurovisions 2 years ago in Lisbon. So thank you, Irving. And I want to thank also Irving for being our technical brain of this online streaming. So thanks a lot, Irving. And I want to thank...
Even if it was sometimes brain dead.
Exactly, no.
Not exactly.
I want to thank you, Carla, for embracing this project last year and to push me and Irving to do it in the Tel Aviv and this year online. And I want also to thanks to Isabel, who embraced also this project this year with us. It's a pleasure to work with you. And I want to thank, I have a big list of people to thank. So first of all, my colleague Gonçalo Oliveira that did the web design of our website. So following us in our website, eurovisions.eu. And I want to thank to Ophelia, Design and Communication, for the brand identity that we have these wonderful logos and stuff. Thank you, Anna. I want to thank to José Dias for the music of the generic and also for Korjun for the amazing interval acts. And our guests, our amazing guests of these 3 days, John van Uden, Rainier Veers, Alan Tubery, and Wilfred van Dalen and Nuno Valério in the first day. In the second day, Jess Carneil, Paul Lashmana, Joana Martins, Enrica Euren, Nuno Galopin, and Dave Gensen. And these invitees for this last day, Dr. Freiling, Alessandro Capicchioni, Carla Bugalho, Alex Carlier, Fraser Mack, and Pedro Granger for being with us. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope to see you next year in Rotterdam. So enjoy.
So, if we thank so many people, we also want to thank you, the audience, who is assisting us and helping us with very interesting questions and discussions that you can follow on YouTube and on Facebook. So if you have any comments, leave them there and we're going to discuss them with you. And maybe sometimes there will be also an interesting idea that we can use for the roundtable. But now let's start. Let the show begin with the head of the reference group of the Eurovision Song Contest, Dr. Frank-Dieter Freiling, who will explain to us why and how the decision had to be taken to cancel the Eurovision Song Contest 2020. So enjoy, and we'll see each other after the interview. And tonight with us is Dr. Frank-Dieter Freiling from the German broadcaster ZDF, head of the reference group of the Eurovision Song Contest. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Freiling.
As always, a pleasure.
Well, last Saturday we had the big European show, Europe Shine a Light, replacing the Eurovision Song Contest 2020. Are you happy with the show that the Dutch broadcaster produced?
Happy in what sense? I mean, it certainly wasn't the Eurovision Song Contest. We had no intention of pretending that. It was very clearly a very different show, organized under shortest notice from our Dutch colleagues and the host broadcaster in Rotterdam, simply to give the artists and the songs of 2020 a forum, a platform, and use the brand Eurovision and the fan community to raise awareness of the challenges that we have. And of course, in the end the show with a very clear message that there is going to be a Eurovision Song Contest 2021 in Rotterdam.
So why did the reference group take this decision not to have a Eurovision in 2020 and just having a replacement show? Because there have been voices of people saying, oh, you could do it in a studio without public, doing some show with the voting online. Why did you take this decision?
Well, I think it's a combination of different things. I mean, we now know what the status would have been on the week of the 10th to the 16th of May. And it would have meant that many European countries would not have been allowed to travel. So it would have been impossible for them to come to Rotterdam. We would not have had an audience, more than 100 people in the arena, which is more than just a basic technical crew, not even a single artist included. We probably would not have had many of the acts because they are somewhere in the world, or would have been somewhere in the world that we had planned to be part of the three finals. So when we had to decide this, we probably feared it would be even worse, but the reality confirmed our decision that there is no chance to do something that justifies the name Eurovision Song Contest in Rotterdam in May. The idea of a studio production without audience was on our mind. We checked that a lot, but it probably, and confirmed again by reality, would have meant that a vast majority of acts would not have been able to come to Rotterdam. So we would have only had to do video, which would mean, some of you might have seen the German pre-show on that Saturday, where you had the odd combination that some acts are live, but without possibly any backup, any LED or whatever. And then you have high-end video productions that come from a different era and a different time when they were produced. You can't mix that together and have any quality. So then the only choice would have been to do a solid video production. And I mean, the Eurovision Song Contest is not about a video show in the studio. It's about an audience, it's about live acts, it's about the whole package that we have offered in the last decades. And I think half of the reference group was close to tears, but we then decided it is better to not give a bad copy or something that kept everyone disappointed, but definitely cancel May, and then look ahead. And the look ahead went in different directions. Of course, we looked whether it might make sense to postpone to later in the summer or the early autumn and try then. I think the overall forecast when we had to make the decision was rather pessimistic, that the situation is not that much improved. I mean, if we look now at the end of May, we might see that differently, but then again, none of us can forecast whether there is a second wave or anything coming. At that point, there was a strong belief that there is a second wave coming just in the beginning of the autumn, which would have been September, October. And then the question is, can we take the financial risk of keeping everyone and everything on board for another 4 months and then have a show, then possibly have tickets sold again, and then have to cancel again because there were new restrictions coming up, which would have been a huge financial challenge for the host broadcaster and for us, for the EBU, and for all the participating members, that we then decided maybe it is better to make a clear cut for 2020 and look for something else. And fortunately, NPO came up very quickly with an idea what we want to use the evening slot that every member broadcaster had at 9 p.m. on a Saturday for the final, to do something else and at least give the artists and the songs a chance to shine and give Europe something to watch together.
Mm-hmm. It took some time until the Dutch broadcaster came up with this alternative show. So in the meantime, Sweden and other broadcasters decided to do their own thing on the 16th of May, or proposed alternatives in their own program. What did you feel in this particular period? Did you feel that the European currents is going down?
No, but they weren't late. They only announced it late. I mean, we were planning very early in that process, but we didn't want to go out before we knew that we could do it and that we would have a chance to do it. I mean, of course, there was still a consideration, could possibly some people show up live and all of that. I think the EBU and the host broadcaster wanted to make sure if we make the announcement that we are doing Shine a Light, that it is also happening. And that's why we announced it rather late. What happened in many of the member countries would have happened anyway, because we had the Tuesday evening, Thursday evening, and the program around the final on Saturday anyway. I mean, all the members do their programming around that, and they had those empty slots. And I think many of the members, Britain, for example, and others, Austria, Sweden, grew with the challenge and came up with ideas how to make this nevertheless the Eurovision week, and bring old shows, bring other elements, bring documentaries around it. And I think in most cases it worked out very nicely. So it's not a matter of disparity or diversity gone wrong, but this is what Eurovision is about. It's always a mix of our core content and what the members put around it. And this year, even more, the members were challenged to fill the slot, the space around it with their own programming.
Mm-hmm. So for the fans, I think many of them saw it coming. First, when the Danish national final took place without any audience, and then I think shortly after the European Football Championship were cancelled. Eurovision took a little bit longer. How does it come? What were the processes to decide and to take this big step to cancel Eurovision?
No, I mean, we had in early March the head of delegation meeting, which is the last big preparatory meeting before the final week, before the delegations arrive. And I was standing on stage and promising all the delegations, we will have a Eurovision Song Contest 2020, and I begged them to come and maybe slim down delegations, but have their singer come and show and show that we can do it. I think up until mid-March, we were 100% sure we can do something. And then we all got steamrolled by events, by the lockdown in every country. I mean, when we were in Rotterdam, no one could foresee that 10 days later we would have national lockdowns that in some countries lasted until now. So we were determined to make this happen, and we would not have this the first year in so many decades where there would be no Eurovision. And actually, I think had we had any chance, it would have been tremendously important to show Europe that there is something that keeps us together. I mean, the last 3 months have been such a failure of the word Europe in Eurovision. We have become so nationalistic, and Europe has completely, not just the dissolving of Schengen and all of this, we have become all very nationalistic, very much watching the neighbor, closing the borders. I think Eurovision would have had a tremendous relevance had we been able to do it. And what we tried with Shine a Light is at least show that there is something that keeps Europe together, that there is a tie that holds us together. I think when we aired it on Saturday, you could see that since we needed the contribution from over 40 members, that not every country was still seeing the mood they were in. I think the opening sequence of all the empty capitals of Europe and the closing sequence of all the singers of 2020 singing a song together, Shine a Light, will become part of the Eurovision legacy and of the memory book of Eurovision. But on the other hand, in Germany, in Switzerland, in Sweden, in other countries, the lockdowns were already open. You didn't have the empty streets anymore. And I can understand that some fans, some media said it was too sad, it was too pessimistic. But this was the mood and the spirit we all were in for 2 months in Europe. And of course, in that sense, Shine a Light was a reflection of it. I can only promise that next year, hopefully, we will not look back, but only look forward and make it a big, happy event for Europe again.
Mm-hmm. Talking about Europe, I mean, you are the, let's say, umbrella organization for so many different public broadcasters in Europe. How difficult was it to get this decision through, and how closely were you talking with the various broadcasters about this decision?
Well, I mean, we have a structure. You know, half of the board is coming from the head of delegations, gets elected from among the head of delegations. So we had that tie anyway, and we had quite a few conference calls with all the head of delegations in discussing the decisions, explaining. As you remember, there was a vast majority, more than 40 of the members. I think all members agreed that we had to cancel. I mean, no one said and came back to us, you have to do this. I mean, that was the overall mood, as much in Europe as it was in Australia and elsewhere. I think there was a bit of discussion about the confirmation of the rules that we did, because again, we wanted to make sure that we are not looking backward, but looking forward. When we reminded everyone that the rules say that an artist can come back in future years. We have had that many times, Lazarov and others who have been many times in the song contest, but it has to be a new song. And over 40 participating members supported that. A couple was not so happy, especially Germany, with that decision. But I think it is more important to have an open competition. I mean, we have that diversity of national selections. I think over 30 member countries do national pre-selections, from Melodian Festival to Israel, to Ukraine, you name it, everyone, to Sanremo in Italy. And if you would have decided we have the same singer and song, if we would have made that exception starting next year again, that would have been a killer for all those national pre-selections, for the whole diversity in the process. It would have killed the whole 5 months period from January to May to build up some European excitement about the new Eurovision, and you would have listened to songs that had played for a year already on the radio, which probably, I'm not saying would sound old, but certainly there is no freshness. And if some would have then decided to bring in new songs or bringing new singers, it would have been impossible to compare a song that has been played on the airwaves for a year long everywhere to a song that is just coming up and has been introduced for 2021. So again, in the sense of fairness and equality, we reconfirmed the rules: singer yes, song no.
Mm-hmm. So talking about the future and let's say also the acceptance of this year's show, we see that the viewing figures in some countries are not really satisfying. So do you think it will be a major challenge to rebuild the acceptance of Eurovision next year?
No, I think it was, as I said, I mean, first of all, it all depended nationally how much promotion the national broadcaster did for the show. There were some countries who did a lot, and that is reflected in the viewings. There were other countries who did very little or no promo, and that is reflected because people simply didn't understand or weren't aware that there is an alternative show coming. The fans alone, the hardcore fans, are not building up a 200 million people audience. I mean, you need a broad viewership that we usually have. So I think people not always knew what to expect from Shine a Light. I think the main attraction, we have to be honest, of Eurovision is not the show act, but is the voting. That's where everyone comes in. That's where we have the highest audience part of the whole show every year in the voting procedure. That didn't happen this year. And as I said, Shine a Light was a great production, but it was a sad not in the quality sense, but in the mood feeling of the mood where we were in. And Eurovision stands for happiness, for diversity, for thoughtfulness, and I think that is not what Shine a Light was for. We wanted to do something else, and so I'm not worried at all about the audience figures. They were everywhere much lower than what a Eurovision would have been. But then again, this wasn't Eurovision.
Mm. Well, Eurovision is also about excitement, the excitement of the voting. Some countries did their own voting show that people could decide which song they would have given their 12 points to. Why didn't the EBU decide to make an online vote country by country, just to make, not to really declare the winner of 2020, but to have an, let's say, an ideal winner of this country, of this year, sorry.
Look, I'm very, very open here. There cannot be a second-class Eurovision winner. I'm not in favor of these alternative votings, because if you have been going through national selectioning, if you have done the tour of Europe, if you get ready to go to the big show and then are in the semi-final and the final, and then have a Europe-wide voting and a jury vote, and then you have a result and then a winner, and then you are the winner of the Eurovision Song Contest. I think we cannot substitute that. You know, I find it slightly difficult when you create a winner of the heart or something like that. What does it mean for us? I mean, there was no Eurovision 2020, so there is no winner 2020. And there is not someone in the second line where everyone says, well, he would have been the winner if there had been a Eurovision. I mean, it's completely unfair to that to that singer and to the act and to the others in the run. It's a nice idea if you do it regionally, if you do it for your territory, but I don't want a second grade winner. There is only one winner of Eurovision, and he or she deserves the full show and the full treatment. And we had beautiful ideas for Rotterdam, especially to include previous winners, the whole process of the whole build-up. We had a couple of great ideas, and I hope they will show up in 2021. Nevertheless, again, just to make transparent what a process is from basically 9 months running up to that May when you're finally on stage, and what the moment is when you win. And when you look at that, you also understand you don't want a B- winner who has whatever regional voting behind him, because that's not fair to him, and I think it's also not helpful from the sense of equality and fairness that someone somewhere in Europe sits and say, "Oh, I would have been the winner had it happened," because that doesn't make him or her happy either.
Mm. So the COVID crisis has not only affected the Eurovision Song Contest, it has affected the whole work of the EBU, of the reference group. How are you preparing now the event for 2021? Is it working?
We have never met so often as we did now. Basically, the reference group, and that means all of them. I mean, I can't even remember where someone was missing. Since no one has meetings anymore, since basically everyone was at home, we had maximum flexibility to come together, and we did it on a weekly or bi-weekly base, and had basic from the members from Israel to Armenia to Britain to Germany. We had them all together, Sweden, and made the necessary decisions, and that's how we're going to continue for the next few months. We just had the final reference group to close 2020. That would have been a personal meeting. We did it by video call. It also was the moment, the formal moment of handover from Jon Ola's son to Martin Osterdahl, because from now on Martin is in control. And Jon Ola is advising and all of that, but now he is the one in charge. Up until Shine a Light, it was Jon Ola's job, as it would have been the final night for the Song Contest 2. And so we are going to continue. We are hoping that hopefully by the end of summer, maybe by September, we are able to meet in person. It's difficult when you have such a diverse reference group that comes from countries inside the EU and outside the EU. So the taking up of borders on June 15 does not help us for the members of the reference group who are outside the Schengen and the EU area. So we have to work on that. But hopefully by late summer we can also start meeting in person. And up until then, we continue our Zoom calls.
So you would say that the COVID crisis even improved the collaboration within the reference group?
We never spent so much time on so many questions as we did. This certainly had an advantage that no one had a rush schedule. And that's the one positive thing, that we had plenty of time to discuss every possible angle of our agenda.
So how come that Mr. Romeo from San Marino television published a very, let's say, harsh statement concerning the Dutch broadcaster if the collaboration between the members is improving?
Say that again.
I mean, we shortly before the Europe Shine a Light, there was a press press information from San Marino RTV. So is it the situation? Did it also provoke some, or that some tensions come out between the members?
But as you said before, we have 41, 43 very diverse broadcasters as members, with very different financial models, with very different resources, with very different artistic concepts. I mean, you are taking the smallest of all possible members with San Marino. A few weeks earlier, ARD, NDR also was quite outspoken in their criticism, for example, when it came to the regulation of song repetition. I mean, this is a diverse membership, and every member has a different motivation. I think it is still a challenge ahead of us. I think the general landscape has certainly not become easier. We are sending out the rules for 21 soon. We will give a deadline to apply for participation. We have many who said they wanted to participate in 2021, but quite a few others are still outstanding. And I think when you look at the financial situation of some member networks, it is going to be a challenge for many to cover the costs of being part of Eurovision. And we are trying to help as much as we can. But the Corona crisis certainly have not made life easier for members.
Mm. Do you fear that some of the broadcasters may drop out of Eurovision?
Fear, it certainly is a possibility, yes.
Mm.
In tremendous budget cuts, I mean, we are all running out of content. Some of our members are not financed, luckily, as we are in Germany or elsewhere, by an independent license fee, but they are dependent on money from the state budget. And as you can imagine, what state budgets have to do these days, when you have to support not just the network, but the whole cultural landscape and the economy and everything else. And we simply have to see, I think, many members in the Mediterranean, in Southern Europe, in Eastern Europe, in Central Europe, are not sure yet where they are standing financially next year. On the other hand, I mean, if there is one group that is motivated to go ahead, it's the heads of delegation. I mean, these are at the core of the fan community. I think they will all try their utmost to make it happen. But we will see.
Mm-hmm.
And so, also, sorry, as we know, we can talk at a later point. 2020 certainly will also be not necessarily as 2019 has been, as 2019 has been.
Mm, I see. So what is quite sure is that Eurovision is going to take place in 2021 in Rotterdam. But when we see and hear what the Dutch authorities are saying about big events, large-scale events with lots of audience, it looks like Eurovision is going to take place without an audience.
Well, we heard that statement too, but it was also corrected by the health minister 2 days later and put more precisely. We certainly have to be prepared much better than we were this summer, with only 2 months' notice, on what the options are to make sure that we will have a song contest 2021. We are determined to make it happen. And I think it has to be in a catastrophic surrounding that we would have to come to the conclusion that we have to cancel it again, which I think is not on the horizon for now, hopefully. But we are determined to make Eurovision 2021 happen and make 2020 the exception of the rule.
So you could imagine a song contest without the fans in the venue?
I think our job is to imagine a lot of things and be prepared for it and have different scenarios ready, and then simply see what the development in our countries is. I think no one would dare to make a forecast what the situation of this world in May next year is. Our job is to be prepared. As I said, the guiding line is there is going to be a Eurovision 2021. We have made that commitment together with the city of Rotterdam, together with the host podcaster, with the EBU, that we will try our very utmost to make it happen. How it will happen will depend on many figures on the way.
Okay, so we keep our fingers crossed that we will have a nice show next year. Thank you very much, Dr. Freiling, for being with us, for explaining all these interesting things to our audience. And we are looking forward to see you again and the other members of the reference group in Rotterdam next year.
Absolutely. You bet on it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, a very, very interesting outlook of the head of the reference group. And he was already talking about the heads of delegations who are very close to the fan base and doing their utmost to make Eurovision happen. So one of them is Alessandro Capicchioni, the head of delegation of San Marino, one of the countries that was not very favorable towards the idea of Eurovision Shine a Light. So let's see what Alessandro is going to tell us in his interview. So our next guest is coming from the very heart of Italy, from San Marino. Thank you, Alessandro Capicchioni, for being with us tonight.
Oh, thank you, Irving, for inviting me. Hello to everybody.
You are the head of delegation of San Marino. And as I told, San Marino is in the heart of Italy. So obviously, your country has been affected by the COVID-19 crisis in a particular way. Would you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. The center north of Italy has started this epidemic in Europe, and of course we also had some cases which are very few compared to the other regions in Italy and the other countries, of course, because we are very small. But in terms of percentage, were quite affected, because sometimes there were some days in which we had the highest in the world, like 15% death rate among all the people who got the virus. And of course the lockdown, we have been in lockdown. We've been in lockdown more than Italy, more than surrounding regions, because we had to wait for the decisions and then follow them. But it's been a harder lockdown, so to speak, because in the hardest period, the borders were closed. So the minor borders were definitely, it was stopped, it was closed. And the bigger ones, there was police who was checking everybody who wanted to get in or out. And it was very difficult to get a good reason to do it. And so we basically were locked down and locked in our very small borders. Yeah.
So what did it mean for the work of San Marino RTV?
Well, of course, it has affected a lot the daily routine. If you consider that it was omitted, like 40% of the regular employee were admitted into the TV premises. So everybody who could work at home stayed at home to do the smart working, of course, like the administrative offices and the commercial ones. And also the radio people were able to work from home. But regarding the journalists and the technicians, they were forced to go, and it was a very tough situation. And as you know, I'm not an employee anymore, so I had not to go, fortunately. I could work from home, but I went just for half an hour to say hello during our program that we broadcast on Friday 15th, and to say hello to our host. And suddenly a guy from the security came and said, "You're not supposed to stay here unless you have an FPP3 mask, because it's too small for 3. Oh, I just said hello. Oh, yes, please, now you go." Okay, then I go, don't worry. And just for you to know. And I was allowed in by the Director General and from the office. And so that is the situation. It's a very tight control and a lot of nervosism, to say the truth.
So the situation was not only difficult for the smaller TV stations, obviously also for the bigger ones, otherwise Eurovision would not have been cancelled. How did you learn about the cancellation of the contest?
Me?
Yeah.
On Twitter.
On Twitter?
Oh, yes. There was a leak. So the EBU was not able to communicate to the broadcasters that the show was cancelled. So there was a leak, and then I had to say, only 5 minutes later, I received a call from the EBU saying, "We're very sorry, we planned to be out at 3, but the news was leaked, so we're calling everybody saying sorry." And yes, so to Twitter. Then I immediately called Senhit, and she could not believe it, because she said, "Well, cancelled? I thought it was delayed." Then I called the Director General, and he became immediately very angry because of the leak, of course. And so that's the way I got to know the news.
So you offered to the EBU an alternative program, or an idea for an alternative program. That had it been discussed, or
I think so. I think so. We first said that we thought that the cancellation was not a good idea. We thought the postponement, or at least the possibility to have a postponement, was a much better idea. And of course, it's yet to be confirmed. But if the junior will be organized in Poland in November, again, it's yet to be confirmed. We don't see many reasons why 20 days before the junior, the senior could not be organized. Of course, it's just a few hundred meters on the west compared to Poland. So we asked for the postponement, but of course the answer was it is not possible. And then when the news about the Eurovision Shine a Light program was out, we thought that it was not the right program for the moment. And the TV has sent an alternative proposal, which was meant more to talk about the situation, which was supposed to let each broadcaster tell how they were coping with the emergency. It has been checked, and we received an answer saying some of the ideas were already in the program in Europe Shine a Light. Thank you very much for your collaboration, of course, but it has not been accepted. We also know that the RAI has sent their own proposal, which basically was quite similar to our proposal, but it was refused as well. And then RAI decided to produce some original contents to be added to Eurovision Shine a Light and broadcast their own program, which was derived from Eurovision Shine a Light. And we, as San Marino RTV, decided to broadcast the signal from Rome, from RAI, and not from the EBU.
So obviously there was, let's say, kind of tension between San Marino RTV and the EBU. When I read the statement from the General Director, Mr. Romeo, I was a little bit surprised that his words were quite harsh in front of the Dutch broadcaster, for example. I'm just citing a very, very bad page this year is the Dutch management of the ESC 2020, confusion, lack of coordination, leaks, improbable negotiations with the on-site hotels, and so on. What made him so angry?
Well, basically the reasons that you just read. So I don't think I'm allowed to speak about all the topics you said, but it's a very particular year. If you consider that I have done 15 Eurovision now, from Portugal to Azerbaijan, and from the very north to the very south. Well, I think I haven't seen such an Eurovision as this year. And the fact that we think, and we told everybody, that a program like Eurovision Shine a Light without the contest wouldn't have been able to tell the moment that we live in. I mean, why is Eurovision Shine a Light, the program, done? You can't neither understand that there is a pandemic moment, that the world is living a terrible moment. So the idea of Mr. Romeo was that we need now public service television, where we can unite Europe under one sole flag, instead of having different reactions, different answers to the problem from each different country. So Iceland had their own contest, the BBC, TVR, TVP, RAI, San Marino, Greece, everybody has done something. And this means to split Europe does not mean to unite. And it does not mean that you, again, take the opportunity to make a really public service, something that we maybe have forgotten.
Mm-hmm. So why is it so important for San Marino to fly the flag of public service television and to maybe enforce the values with these harsh words?
But because this is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. I mean, of course, the Eurovision Song Contest has become more than a TV show. It's a worldwide event that involves lots of different professionalities, budgets, investments, has become a lot of private matter in many ways. And sometimes, I have to say, the public broadcasters who are participating are overwhelmed by all the stuff that goes around the Eurovision, because the quality is very high, the TV quality, the standards that is required, the music, the arrangements, all the thing around the around their sole TV show have become much bigger. And that, as I said, the TVs sometimes are getting smaller compared to the partners that they have. But this time is like, hey, look, let's reset everything, because we have a pandemic, and now it's time us to be the important part of the whole thing. We need to make service, public service, because we are public broadcasters, and we need to talk to the people and say, let's make one show, the whole Europe. Let's tell and let's tell to each other what happens, and that we can do it together, and in a much warmer way. And that was our aim. And I'm sorry if I cannot explain properly, because I could say it better in Italian. I had to say. And so.
No,
That was the aim, you see, because it was clear you have to do that. I mean, of course, it's a decision that has been made, which we respect, of course, but it could have been done in another way, and you say it. And if nobody listens, then you say it loud. What can you do?
Well, public broadcasting is already in a difficult situation in many countries in Europe. So do you think that the cancellation of Eurovision has made the situation for them even more difficult?
No, I don't. Yeah, there's been problems, of course. Each country surely has problems with the cancellation. It can be minor problems or bigger problems, but each country has problems because the artist won't show up during the contest. There's been no competition. There's been a lot of investments from lots of countries, productions, whatever, and everything has been cancelled and wiped away in a second. So every broadcaster has received some damages and strong economical losses due to the decision taken by the EBU without consulting none of them. Sure, the question is, why not trying to postpone rather than cancel? Because every broadcaster has to be sheltered. This is the question that we try to do. If you cancel, you don't shelter the broadcasters, you are supposed to do, because they are members of a union. So they are the union. So it doesn't seem that the government or the union does the best for the broadcasters themselves. I also said and proposed in a naive way, if you want, why don't the EBU take action and try to protect a little bit economically, maybe, their situation? I understand this is a very naive question, but why not, if we are all parts of the same union?
Well, I had an interview already with Dr. Freiling from the head of the reference group, and well, he's kind of used that Mr. Romeo is using sometimes very emotional words to express his feelings. But does it also have to do with the fact that a smaller TV station needs to be more in the face to
Yes.
get his message through?
Yes, because when you send a message, your message hasn't got the same power as another country, which is in the nature of the things, of course, because the bigger countries contribute more to the EBU, of course. What Romeo says is rights are rights. It doesn't matter how big and how small you are. And if they don't listen to you because you're small, then you have to shout out louder than the others.
So San Marino shouts a lot. Do you feel that that you could already move something in the big Eurovision EBU circus?
Can you repeat the question? There was a car passing by, I could not hear.
Do you think that shouting this way, you already managed to move something in this big Eurovision machinery?
Not as I know, but I hope that apart from the, as you said, the warmth in the words of Mr. Romeo, we hope that sometimes if the EBU consider good advices, what we give or what we shout, as you say, they can be useful for everybody. That is the aim. Because, I mean, we are not talking about ourselves. We are the least to take advantage of everything. I mean, in many different ways. So it's basically a question of rights, of a bigger vision of what you would like the EBU to be.
Do you think that the situation that we lived with the cancellation and everybody doing his own stuff for Eurovision, did it affect the currents within the EBU, the cooperation of the various TV stations in a negative way?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, of course, many TV stations, as we had, do understand that in the end, cancellation is a possibility. Of course, that it has been taken as a decision, but it was not very far to be a necessary one, of course. I'm saying it could have been 50% postponement, 50% cancellation, and it has been cancelled. And many broadcasters say, okay, but what can you do? Because it's such a big machine to organize that you can't say that 2 weeks before, hey, we don't do it, or we do it, because You need to start months in advance to prepare a proper show. Okay, that said, I don't think that this has affected, but probably many things will be examined with more accuracy from the side of the broadcasters. Maybe the trust won't be the same as before for many years.
So how are you as San Marino RTV reacting to the situation in terms of preparing now for 2021?
Well, we are already working on the music, and we are already planning a calendar of promotional events. I'm not sure I can talk about this to you, but if you don't say to anybody, we plan to release a video every month. We made the list. We have the list until next May. Just to keep warm, we confirmed our artist, and we go on this way. Yeah, we are quite in an idle state now. The rush has gone.
So let's think about, imagine that we are in 2030 and now you look back 10 years ago in 2020, what will you keep in your memories from this Eurovision year?
Well, this non-Eurovision year. Probably that we lost an opportunity to make history just because of the core virus. Because sometimes when you look back to past editions, you have some years are very particular, and you can tell, oh, this year was because happened this and this and this and that. That's why blah blah blah. But this particular year hasn't a proper characteristic. It's just an editing of video clips and messages which were basically saying the same things. So you really, you can't tell, but you really can't tell the moment. That's a pity. So we missed the opportunity to, anyway, be the European Broadcasting Union and be in the Eurovision Song Contest in spite of everything was happening.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Capicchioni, for being with us, for explaining the position.
I'm very happy. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody is bad, or I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are very professional people who have taken a decision which could have been a better decision in our opinion. And of course Eurovision will go on, and I don't think that all broadcasters will confirm their participation next year, because it's a wonderful example of how nations can be together under the same roof, and all of the fans that party for their favorite artist. It's such an amazing thing that it has to be repeated all over until it's possible, of course. I'm not saying that everything is bad. I'm just focusing on the few facts that unfortunately, probably, it couldn't be managed in another way that maybe was better. In our opinion, it couldn't be better, of course. According to other opinions, it could not. But yeah, I'm not shooting over the EBU, of course, which I consider my family. It's always been my work during the TV period. So it's part of my family in a way. So
yeah, well, I totally agree. The thing is that it's just interesting also to confront the different points of view and to
course.
This is what we want to find out with our conference, to give these various approaches and to make people think about the complexity of things.
There's one thing to say, of course. Someone can say, well, it's very easy for you in San Marino. You don't know how big this organization is. You don't know how many aspects you have to control before saying, yes, we can do it, because we have to guarantee the perfect conditions in terms of security, safe, healthy transportation, airplane for 40 countries, which have to move from all over Europe plus Australia and Israel to the same place. So how can we guarantee that, see what is happening? And it's only a few months to go. I understand this point of view, of course. And I remember, for example, when shortly before the HADO delegation meeting started, I met Frank Dietrich in the hall of the hotel, and he was very optimistic. And he said, well, basically he said, well, I don't think that this coronavirus will affect a lot. I'm very sorry that maybe he told you directly, probably, I don't know. And so I know that he wanted to do it all the way. So I guess that he tried to fight to do it anyway. But then if he said, okay, it's not possible, if he also said that, it means that probably it was very, very difficult. I can't deny it. But at least we have the freedom to express another opinion.
And to discuss it in this framework of the Eurovisions Conference. Thank you so much, Alessandro Capicchioni, for being with us.
Thank you.
We will discuss the whole thing after we have listened to all the interviews. I'm looking forward also to some statements of composers and singers. And I'm looking forward to see you again next year at Eurovision in Rotterdam, hopefully.
Will be my pleasure. Enjoy.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello again, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this wonderful interview with Alessandro. And now we will have another wonderful guest with us this afternoon. So Carla Bugalho is the head of the Portuguese Eurovision delegation since 2015. And she's also a member of the Eurovision reference group since the end of 2018. So let's listen to Carla Bugalho's interview now.
Hello, Carla. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Carla.
Hi, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for having accepted.
So today we have someone who is the head of the Portuguese delegation in the Eurovision Song Contest since 2015. She's also a member of the reference group, which controls and guides the event, Eurovision. And she was the deputy executive producer in the Eurovision in Lisbon. So Carla, thank you for being with us. I will start with a general question. You were probably a member of the audience before becoming a professional, television professional. What is the main difference between these two perspectives, the outside and the inside perspective?
Well, only when you are inside you understand how complex it is to produce any kind of TV show, but especially a show of this dimension, which is not only a show, as you know, it's also an event. And you don't have quite the notion of that until you work on this side. That's the main difference that I find, because you don't really understand how things happen. You sit and you watch TV and you think, well, it's done, but it's not. It's not quite like that.
Yeah. So did this fact of being inside the behind the curtains of the Eurovision Song Contest affect in any way your appreciation of it? I mean, I don't even know if you like the event. I assume that you like it, but I mean, does the fact of having this knowledge of the way you had to sort of construct it affect your appreciation of it, Carla?
Inevitably, yes, because as we've been working on both sides of Eurovision, both as a participating delegation and also as an organizing committee or a host broadcaster. So now that we've done it, we tend to look at other people's work with a more critic eye. You know what I mean?
Of course.
It's not to judge them or
Yeah.
nothing like that. It's just, well, if it was me, I would do it like this, or in Lisbon we did it like this or like this, you know. It's just we've been now on both sides of the Eurovision, so we know how hard it is to produce it. So there are some questions or issues that we don't even go to the host broadcaster with, because we know how overwhelmed they are in the production weeks. And we have a capacity of solving things faster because we know what we are going to expect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can imagine, yes. Yeah, I can imagine. It happens a little bit with being inside the music and outside, you know. I mean, we as musicians tend to listen to music in a different way because, you know, it's not just I like or I don't like, it's I like, but that part there could have been,
it's awful. Sometimes it's awful to watch TV with me. It's awful.
I can imagine.
I keep on saying things to my husband and he just stares at me like this. Why? Just watch it. And I say, but look, it's not well done. It's not like this. They should have done this and this. It's really awful. I start screaming at the television sometimes.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Well, it's like listening to sometimes music, and my husband is a sound engineer, and I say, oh, that sounds really nice, and he goes, yes, but the reverberation could be a little bit also, and okay, right, so
yes,
I know
details, yes,
details, okay.
So Carla, correct me if I'm wrong. You became part of the Portuguese delegation in 2005.
Seven.
Sorry.
Seven.
Sorry. So in these 13 years, how do you perceive the changes that Eurovision undertook?
Well, first of all, the main change, as you know, was coming from one semi-final to two semi-finals, which gave opportunity to all the countries that wanted to participate to effectively be a part of it. This was one of the main changes, and the growth of the event and the growth of the TV show in terms of complexity. It is also very noticeable since, especially I think since 2015. Well, I was a bit more inside also in 2015 than the previous years, but also in 2012 in Baku, things were already very complex in terms of production. Well, they built a venue, so
small changes.
Yes, but anyway, since 2015, Austria, when they organized it, they put a lot of care and interest in the treatment of delegations, for example, and they really cared about the comfort of people and that were participating. And I think that then in 2016, I was not there, but I mean, the contest producer was Christer Björkman. It was the first time that you had a real delegation bubble, so that delegations would have their own dedicated space. They had already, but it was a more comfortable space, even more than in Austria. Well, the changes have been huge, and in all sides of Eurovision. I think, well, Alessandro was the executive supervisor since 2011, so I think this has to do a bit with him also and his vision for the contest and the way he wanted to do this a really big event that could overcome the TV show. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's huge differences. Although one thing that is practically the same since we are participating is the rehearsal plan.
Mm-hmm.
That was already very, very tight and rigorous since I'm part of the delegation, since 2007.
Yeah. So, and then Portugal won, right, in 2017. So, just briefly, can you tell us what you felt in that moment? I mean, I know it's a sort of a stupid question because I think the whole Portugal cried and everything. But I mean, you were there, and you've been on the inside and on the behind the curtains of years and years of Portugal not winning anything, and suddenly, out of the blue, there comes Salvador and that beautiful song which nobody expected it would win. I mean, yes, later
we didn't expect. Yeah, we didn't expect.
But it was exactly so.
We didn't expect it to win. I mean, I even today, I cannot describe quite well what I felt because we were there, we were working, and our main concern was that Salvador was okay.
Exactly.
So we had a special authorization from the reference group so that Luisa could do the first week of rehearsals.
Exactly.
Because Salvador was not allowed by his doctors to be away from Portugal for 2 weeks. The maximum they authorized was 1 week, and one of his doctors had to come with a delegation and be permanently with us. And well, for starters, negotiating this with the EBU and then managing to have there Luisa for the first rehearsals, and then Salvador arriving on the day of the red carpet.
Oh, yeah.
The red carpet. He arrived directly to the red carpet.
Oh my gosh.
With a late flight.
Everything perfect.
Everybody was asking. Everybody was asking on the red carpet because Ukraine was supposed to be the last country. They were the host country, but Salvador wasn't there. So Ukraine left, and we were standing there waiting for Salvador. The car left him on the other side of the carpet, which was very long, very, very long, even longer than Lisbon. So he came walking behind the journalists like this to meet us in the beginning of the carpet. But journalists were asking if he was real, if he really existed, or if it was just something that we created or that we were inventing. And finally, when he appeared, he was like a god to them. It took us more than 2 hours to get to the end of the carpet. And on the next end, he was really tired because he had had 2 flights. And on the next day, he had 2 dress rehearsals. On the end of the second, he was already fed up with rehearsals. So imagine if he had been there for the first week. But as I was telling you, our main concern was to know if he was okay, if how was he feeling all the time. We were like security officers in the door of the dressing room so that people wouldn't come in, because people would come in our dressing room just to speak to him and to see him and to get pictures with him. And he's not like that. And even if he was pretty ill at the time. He was pretty sick. So with all these concerns, we weren't really thinking of winning, at least until we get to the semi-final.
Exactly.
And when we get to the semi-final and we go through to the final and we realize that, at least online, because we didn't have the results, that he was the most popular song on the social media, we were just looking at each other and say, okay, maybe this is an historical result for Portugal. But never thinking of a victory.
Actually winning.
And then we were on the first semi, the days went by, and second semi-final finished. And when we get to the rehearsals, people start talking about us, about the bets and the odds. And we were just like, what are you talking about? Yes, Portugal is really up in the odds. And I just left. I kept on laughing at people because for me it was impossible to win, you know, because I knew that it was very hard and the audience wasn't easy to convince. And even if we had a good result with the jury, maybe people wouldn't get it. It was a Portuguese song.
Exactly.
Sung in Portuguese. But one thing that had already happened in the first semi-final started to give us some alerts. It was the fact that as soon as Salvador came inside the arena and went on that small B stage,
that's my dog. Who likes Eurovision very much.
Okay. And so each time that he went on the arena and sang on that small stage, there was an absolute silence, you know? And silence in the Eurovision audience inside the venue is something that you never hear. You don't have silence, never. There's always people screaming and waving flags and doing everything. And even in the dress rehearsal or in the live show of the semi-final, they would completely be in silence as soon as he started to sing. And we were just like, whoa, this gives us the chills, you know? We were
exactly.
Yeah. And then
what's happening here?
Yeah, and then the rehearsals for the final happened, and we kept on going up and up on the odds. We didn't mind very much until we get to the day of the final. And all televisions all around Europe, our colleagues, wanted an interview with him and wanted him to be on prime time on their news and wanted to have just a picture of him because they really loved him. In Iceland, people came to tell me, look, in Iceland, he's huge. In Iceland.
My God.
In the Spanish, no, our Spanish colleagues, the Swedish guys, everybody was crazy with him. And so we went to the final, and the results, when we get the first 12 points from Sweden, which had been the previous host, so they opened the vote.
Yeah.
We were like, what?
Exactly.
12 points from Sweden. Okay, these are the jury points. We knew that maybe we had a good result, but let's wait for the public voting.
And
then they were announced in an order, in a, how do you say, growing order?
Yeah.
And I realized we were going to win before, when they gave the points to Bulgaria.
Yes. Yes.
And I realized even before that, because it was impossible, we already had a different for them. But anyway, but no one understood.
Yeah.
No one understood.
Everybody was in shock. I assume everybody would be in shock.
And so we got all those points from the public and we win. And Salvador wasn't even aware that we had. And my main concern was to get him safe to the stage, for him to get the trophy, and take Luisa with him, because a lot of the merit was hers too, because not only she wrote the song, but she did a bunch of rehearsals that were really necessary for the performance to go well. And then suddenly I realized that I left my phone on my green room table, and the delegation was not there anymore. And I said, okay, without phone, how can I speak to Lisbon and make all the lives and all? So my main concern was that I ran through the crowd because I was already in the middle of the arena. My phone was there. So I'm on the phone with Portugal because we had the first interview. I mean, I couldn't even enjoy the victory.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we had a lot of lives to Portugal, and we had the first live, but you can't imagine what happened to us on the first live. Because after this all confetti and everything, the winner stays on stage, and they have a first interview for Eurovision.tv, and then for the broadcaster that is representing the country. In this case, Malato, one of our commentators, had the first interview on stage with him. But this interview had to be made with all the technical crew that was producing the show. They had such a hard time producing this show in Ukraine, because a lot of things happened in production that didn't go very well, that they were celebrating outside the Obi van. They forgot that we had the live to Portugal, to Lisbon. So everybody was in RTP just waiting. Maria was in RTP just waiting. And suddenly, boom, nothing from the EBU. Because they were just celebrating, they had made it. Although it was very difficult to do this show, they had made it, and they were celebrating outside the Eurovision. And then we were just like, but we're supposed to have a live to Portugal. And then, oh God, yes, everybody ran to the Eurovision. A cameraman came in, and then we managed to do the live, not without having a black screen in Portugal in RTP for like 2 minutes. But it was like this, I mean, and then we get to the hotel, and then we had to leave in the next morning at 7 a.m. We slept like 3 hours. Security guys all over us, sleeping in the door of Salvador's room. And it was like this, but I mean, when we realized, and I was arriving in Lisbon, and Maria, she was in the airport waiting for us with our board, with the members of our board and our head of programs and everything. And when we landed, I called her immediately and say, we just landed, and she said, you can't imagine what? You can't imagine how many people here in the airport. And I say, well, like the national selection, like the football team. And she said, yes, like the football team.
Exactly.
And I just started saying, everybody, please don't be scared, but there's a big crowd outside. And then we arrived, and we had the press conference, and Salvador faced the crowd, and he was really, really tired by then because he hadn't slept much. And so, I mean, only when I arrived in Lisbon, I truly realized
you got
that
to, yes.
It's
you
true.
Had won.
We won. We won. Portugal won the Eurovision on May 13th. Yeah. This must mean something.
Yeah. So with this big present of winning for the first time Eurovision, you, Carla, receive a huge present also to organize the Eurovision in Lisbon. So to explain, as you said, it's very different to be in the sofa watching television and being inside producing this kind of show and live event at the same time. Can you explain us how it is this dimension of the event in the host city?
Those that enjoy Eurovision as well.
First of all, you have to choose a city. It's the first thing. You have to agree on some dates with the EBU. These dates are also depend of other international events, mainly sports events that happen in May and June. So this is how the date is normally determined. You have to try not to collide with other major TV events that are going to happen in Europe. And then you have to choose the city. And to choose the city, you have from the EBU like a list of what you need to do. That blue thing that Alessandro gave me on the day we won, the blue briefcase. So this as the basics for what you need to organize, and that's when you realize that it's not only a TV show, it's also a huge event that involves a city. So besides knowing that you need a venue to produce this TV show in a big venue, you also need to know if the city has the conditions to first receive everybody, like in hotel capacity and restaurants and other things to entertain. And then you need to know if they have some financial capacity to do things like the Eurovision Village, that is a place that gathers all the fans in the city and where all the sponsors are also there represented. And normally you have a stage where the participants can perform or any other invites that you want to do as a host city or a country, just to represent your country and to showcase what you do here. We for example, in the Eurovision Village, we had every day had a theme in the village, and so we went through all the areas of the Portuguese music, and not only Portuguese music but also our community's music, like the African community and Brazilian community and all that. And so this is not simple to do, and you need to have not only a financial capacity, but also a will from the city that they're going to help us on this. Not only on this, on the delegations, transportations, on creating special dedicated transport lines to get to the venue and to the city center, and a Euro Club. And I mean, the city needs to have also a commitment with the event so that we can organize this. The opening ceremony normally is offered by the city, organized with the host broadcaster and the city. So we started to realize that it was a TV show and an event. It had these two huge dimensions, and the logistics part is really, really tough because it's logistics for your teams and for the delegations that are coming to the country. And so the first step is really, where are we going to do this? So after the city is chosen and everything is agreed with the city, we can start working on, finally, on the TV show and then on the event. But it's very different than to be just watching the show on the sofa, because
A little bit different.
You don't sleep, you don't eat for several days, and in the end the result was very good. But it's the hardest thing we've all done, not because we didn't know what to do, because we understood the event in its full dimension, but because it's really hard work, you know what I mean? To put everything standing, it's really, it's very hard, but in the end, I mean, it pays off.
Of course, I can imagine. It must be also a sort of an obsessive sort of work, because you're so into it for so many days. Well, months actually, because you start preparing things in advance. I would imagine months in advance.
Yes.
And when you finally come to the outcome, where the actual Eurovision Song Contest, it must be really, well, I can't imagine. I mean, I've been in Eurovision, but not in the making of, only as part of the delegation. And you have a small idea of what it is, but not as complete, obviously, as somebody in your position. So, Carla, considering what happened this year and all this pandemic situation and this sort of surrogate event that EBU conceived, the Eurovision Shine a Light, what do you think are the greatest challenges for next year's Eurovision Song Contest?
Well, I think the greatest challenge is to manage to make it in a normal way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
To have these two dimensions, not only being a TV show, because we can produce a TV show. I mean, even with the pandemic, they did the Eurovision Shine a Light. They produced it in 7 weeks. It was a nice TV show, a nice entertainment format. But the event dimension can be very harmed if you don't manage to do things as normal as a normal Eurovision. So the biggest challenge for 2021, I think, is to try to keep normal. How can we do this if there's not a vaccine, or if there's not an efficient treatment yet, or if we have to keep a social distance, or, you know, if we cannot travel, if some delegations cannot travel, even if it's 2 or 3. Imagine this. Yeah. It wasn't this year 2 or 3. No one could travel.
Exactly.
But you know what I mean? So their biggest challenge is how to do this in a normal way, or kind of normal way. And I think the event part is the hardest one.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's when the city that is investing really gets compensation for, because as I was explaining, Lisbon invested in the Eurovision Song Contest, but we had like over 40 or 50,000 people extra visiting the city, staying in the hotels or staying in Airbnbs or whatever, spending money in meals, going to visit the monuments and going to explore around the city and other villages around and everything. So the city wins a lot. And the amount of news that you can find in social media and normal media about Lisbon in that week, especially the event week, it's huge. And it's a huge publicity to the city and to the country.
Exactly.
So this will be their main challenge, I think, more than organizing a TV show or a contest. The event will be the hardest part to deal with, I think.
Yeah.
And even the TV show, I mean, if you have to keep social distance, or if you have to do a show without audience, or I mean,
exactly.
But they are working on this very closely with the EBU and the reference group, and we are all working together to find the best possible solutions for all the scenarios, you know, for what if we have to do this like this, what if we have to do this like this, because this pandemic, I think, caught us all by surprise. And there will be no surprises next year. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So everything must be carefully planned so that a situation like this wouldn't happen, so that we can have a song contest independently of the way we do it, even if it's each country in their own country, in their own TV studio, small studio with a chroma in behind and just singing. You know what I mean? We have to have a song contest, but the event will be the hardest part to solve if the situation remains like it's now, because it's still dangerous. I mean,
of course,
we are not.
Yes. There's a lot of uncertainty at the moment.
And even canceling the part of the event with the public, you are also, I don't know, 100 of people of these 41 delegations. So it is a very big team working on the Eurovision. So these kind of problems of social distancing and stuff.
Imagine that we had, in the peak of the operation, we had more than 1,500 people, including volunteers.
My gosh.
Wow.
In Lisbon. It was like 1523 or something like this. On the peak, including volunteers that were working with delegations, that were helping us inside the production. This is only people working, not delegations, only people working. Imagine we had 43 delegations, and they can vary from 15 to 60 people. 60, not 16.
60. God.
Wow.
Because
there are some delegations that come with a record of bringing a lot of people. So even if you make like 30 for delegation as a medium value, it will be another 1,200 people. So only in this, and we're excluding fans, and we're excluding the press, and we're excluding the police and all the security guys that we work with, and all the authorities and the local authorities too. So it's a lot of people, and we are talking about, and this is only the show.
My God.
And then there is the event part, and everybody that is connected.
The Eurocafe and the Eurovillage.
Yes, everything. So it will be really hard if this doesn't allow the event to happen. So I think this is the main challenge. It's to find out to make all the scenarios possible, so that we can have a song contest as we know it next year.
Exactly.
So we had this last week, the two events online, and in the Saturday the Europe China Light event. So they tried to emulate the dynamics of fans and participation also, and this involvement that we know that Eurovision also has. So you have some data about the audiences in these shows that could share with us?
Well, only for Shine a Light. I know that audiences in Europe were lower than normally, which is
normal.
Which is normal.
Yes.
In Portugal, in relation to last year, we had a lower audience, but not that lower. Imagine from almost 500,000 viewers this year to almost 600,000 last year. So it's not a very big difference.
Close. Yes.
Yeah, the show was also smaller. So if the show is smaller, the audience will be also, that compensates the share in the audience. So of course it was much lower. Even the engagement on social media was much lower. The fact that there was no competition was one of the main reasons why that happened, because Eurovision is a song contest, and if there is no contest, even if you showcase the songs and the artists and everything, people lose interest. So I think it was a very nice show. It was a very emotional show. Some countries maybe thought that we are not all in confinement right now. Some Nordic countries, not all Nordic, more Central Europe countries that are in more advanced phases than we are. But I think it was really a storytelling, like, why was it cancelled? And there was a story that was being told. It was cancelled, and you saw the images of nurses and doctors and the empty streets and old winners singing in empty streets and from their backyards and everything. So it was more like a storytelling, and that there is a light in the end of the tunnel. I think that was the message, the main message. They ended up with the announcement of Rotterdam 2021. They really want to make it happen. All delegations want to make it happen. Let's see. Yes. We are hoping that we will manage to to have a proper song contest.
We are also hoping to be in Rotterdam in 2021.
And the whole effort that the city and the broadcaster there do during the whole year. So it is I don't know, but it is very hard to manage. So
we've been talking with the host broadcaster, of course, with our friends from the Netherlands. But I can't imagine how they really felt. I mean, if it was with us after all that effort and everything, having to cancel the event 2 months before, I think we would all have died.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's
of course. Devastating. I can imagine.
It's devastating. Yes.
So Carla, maybe you can say a hope message to our viewers that they are also fans about this future of Eurovision, to conclude.
Well, we and especially the host broadcaster in the Netherlands, we are all working in making Eurovision happen and come back again and stronger. And I mean, in 64 years of events, as you all know, it had never happened. It had been in countries with war problems even, and with a very hard economical situation also. But they always made it, and it always happened under the most difficult circumstances. And no one wants that this happens again. So everybody's working really hard to make it happen in 2021.
Yeah, we also want it to happen. So I'm sure all the delegations are really working hard so as to have all possible scenarios and make the Eurovision Song Contest in 2021 happen. So we have to thank you again, Carla, for a very
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
And I hope to see you very soon. Sooner than 2021 in Rotterdam. And so that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
To our big audience.
So this was Carla Bugalho, and now we hand over to the other Carla here.
Not me, actually. It's going to be Sophia presenting.
Yeah, so we are starting our roundtable with these two interesting invitees from different points of the world. So from Canada, we have Fraser Mack, a young composer who wrote the song She Got Me, along with Laurel Barker, Patrick and Dominic, that represented Switzerland last year in Tel Aviv. So, and he's a composer of the Polish song that would represent Poland in Rotterdam this year. So we have a very funny story because we met each other last year at the Wiwi Block party in Tel Aviv, where he saved me by giving me an invitation to the party, and I could party all night long. So thank you, Fraser, for being with us and for accepting our invitation. And then we have here Pedro Granger. He's a Portuguese actor and TV host, very well-known face among the Portuguese audience.
Oh, don't say that.
Due to his frequent presence in Portuguese series, as well as in different shows and programs, such as the Portuguese National Selection and 2012, and a commentator in the Eurovision as well.
I was so good, that experience. It was a dream come true.
You could see Pedro in the Eurovision in Lisbon 2 years ago, hosting the artist in the press conferences. So we are so happy to have both of you here with us. Thank you for coming. And
we thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So we will start with a question that we made for all our guests. We want to know, we are very curious to know about your story related to Eurovision, when we did start. So I want to start with Fraser, and then Pedro will tell.
Okay.
Yeah, well, my story with Eurovision, I mean, I'm from Canada, so that's not part of Europe. So I didn't really know what Eurovision was until about 3 years ago. A really good friend and colleague of mine named Laurel Barker had moved to Europe and done a lot of writing in many countries, and she had invited me saying, Fraser, come to Europe, you should meet some of my friends. And through that, I got invited to the Swiss camp of Eurovision. And I was like, what is Eurovision? And that year she had written Stones for Zibs. And so she went to Portugal.
I loved Zibs, sorry.
And yeah, I mean, no, they're a great band.
It was so unfair they didn't go to the final.
Thanks, I actually kind of agree, even though I wasn't even part of that song, but they're friends of mine too, and I've written with them. But that's the year Portugal had won the year before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Portugal. And she's like, Fraser, not only is it like super fun, but it's super gay as well. And I'm gay. So I was like, okay, I need to be part of this at some point. And I was actually lucky enough to be invited back to the Swiss camp the following year, where I wrote She Got Me with a few friends for Luca, and then went to Tel Aviv and got to really experience Eurovision and everything firsthand. And so that's when I was like, this has to be part of my life forever and ever and ever. And now I'm hooked.
Yeah. And for you, Pedro, when you're
91 was the best Eurovision ever. So I remember previous Eurovisions like 90 and 89 and some when I was younger, but 91 was a very, very special year. Was very unfair. Cannes didn't win. And it was very cool because like in the Israeli press conference with Netta, we sang a bit of Cannes together, so it was really cool. And no, but it was one of the best Eurovisions ever. I love the 90s and the 80s in the Eurovision. And I have a diva, Siga, Nedaya, but 91 was a very, very, very good year. And then it started, and never stopped.
Well, thank you. If I can just follow up a little bit to know how you really engage with the Eurovision. So starting with Fraser, so you write songs, and I wanted to ask a little bit about. So some people say, it's really important that the song for Eurovision relates with the traditions of the country, and in some cases that it should be sang in the national language of the country. How do you see this, as a songwriter?
As a writer, working with artists that are going to potentially represent a country, I think first and foremost, it is important to be able to incorporate some sort of a cultural part of that, like bring something special from that country to the table. Like for instance, with She Got Me, yodeling is such a Swiss kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I know the swa and the swa, it just happens to me all the time. But
You're
so
like
for
Rita
Lucas,
Woodruff now.
I mean, the amount of times I've done that is just, I shoot myself about it. But for Luca, for the middle 8 for it, we were like, okay, let's do yo, yo, yo. And I was like, maybe we could kind of get the yodeling sort of thing, so that even though it's kind of got that sort of Spanishy kind of Latin vibe, to at least bring something culturally relevant to the song to make it special. I think is super important. Like that's the Israeli song this year, for instance. I loved how they took the ethnicity of the artist and incorporated, the Arabic scale and also, I guess, African roots. So it was just really cool how they sort of showcased her and the ethnomusicology of the song. I think it's important to be able to sort of, find that special sort of sweet spot.
Yeah. So, and Pedro, for you, what really makes an Eurovision song memorable?
I don't know. The Swedes have been going really well now, isn't it? And they always send something different. And I think that's one of the reasons they go so well. Sometimes you may sing in your language. Sometimes you may bring something more cultural or more pop or more. I think there shouldn't be a rule. I think the diversity should be like the motto. And it's good that sometimes countries sing in their own language. Salvador won singing in Portuguese. And but sometimes we cannot forget that we have the televoting, the public voting. And as a lyricist, if you want to send a message and to tell a story, sometimes you have to tell it in English. That's the truth. Sometimes the soul of the singer and the music is so big that like Salvador's, for example. But sometimes if you want to tell a story, sometimes you have to put it in English, because otherwise the audience will not understand. But there is not a rule. I think diversity should be the thing.
Okay, so I have a question for Fraser. So as a Canadian-born citizen and composer, I mean, what is the importance that the Eurovision Song Contest brought to your career? I mean, what's the relevance of composing for the Eurovision Song Contest in the spectrum of your career? Does it end in the Eurovision, or do you potentialize that participation within, well, record labels, other artists? Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I hope it doesn't just end for me at Eurovision, but because Europe is such a huge place, and because Eurovision is so inclusive with so many countries, what was so special about being there last year was being able to broaden my relationships as far as other countries go. So I was there representing Switzerland, but I also got to meet Christer Björkman, and I was invited to the German camp for Eurovision as well. And so just these little, I mean, this year was Poland for Alicia. So had it not been for Switzerland's, for my involvement in the Swiss song, none of those opportunities would have happened. And I think it's also just a great reminder that like country borders don't necessarily mean that we all can't harmoniously and harmonically work together. It's just really beautiful that even to accept someone from out of Europe as a Canadian writer, to be included in a European festival like this. I just think it leads by example, and I think it's just a beautiful opportunity. I hope that something like that could happen in North America in the future too.
Hope so.
It will, and Eurovision owes a lot to Chris Björkman. Owes a lot. He's a very important person in the Eurovision history.
Yeah,
and a great professional and a great guy. Hi, Chris.
What up, Mister?
Yeah, so Fraser, but you said you were working for various countries, and of course the importance of borders is not the same as it used to be 20, 30 years ago. But are there countries that you would not be ready to work with?
No, I'm actually like very open to working with everyone. I mean, since Eurovision, I've worked with like Michael Rice from the UK. I've worked with Sandro, I've worked with Ben Dolic, who was the German representative. I mean, I love what I do, and I'm always happy to work with talented, happy, like-minded, positive people. You know, so yeah, I'm not a no person. I'm a yes person, and yeah, I would just love to work with anyone. There's no one who I wouldn't work with, let's say.
And Pedro,
yes.
as a fan since the 80s, 90s,
yes.
you like the music from that time. Do you sometimes regret the status of the contest that was more focused on the composers at that time?
No, it's like me and a lot of people, of course, we miss the orchestra. It's like impossible not to miss the orchestra, but nowadays it's impossible to have the orchestra. And we have other things, so we lose some things and we have other things. So, and it's a great show. It's one of the best shows in the world. For me, it's the best show in the world. Okay, sometimes we have good songs, sometimes we have not so good songs. Sometimes we have fair votes, sometimes we have not fair votes, like the neighbors, and we just have Spain. Amor, España, arriba. And Andorra is not participating, and Luxembourg, that we have a lot of immigrants, is not participating, so it's very unfair. No, but I miss the orchestra. Of course, I miss the orchestra, but I totally understand that we cannot have the orchestra nowadays. It's impossible. Working in Eurovision and knowing how the rehearsals work, and it's impossible. It's completely impossible. Semi-final.
Yeah, maybe for a Eurovision with 4 weeks, like Nuno Galopin proposed last Thursday.
Come on, you're already bankrupting the TV stations. What do you want to close them? Is that it?
4 weeks of all party.
That would be impossible. Impossible.
If I can ask, Pedro, also
yes.
relating the ESC to your career. So obviously you experience it both as a fan and also as a professional. And we asked Fraser to kind of relate it to his professional career. Can you please do the same? So how was it to, be part of the Eurovision as a professional?
It was great. It's like when Salvador won. Okay, when you want to talk about like 2012 when I was a commentator, or when Salvador won and I was
as a fan and as a professional?
I refused like a exclusivity contract for another TV station, a very good contract, because RTP promised that if I hosted the weakest link in Portugal, they would give me the final selection and I would be the commentator. So I picked the dream. If it was a good option or not, I don't know. won some things and lost other things. And being a commentator was really good. I made a lot of friends, like commentators as a delegation. And now I have a lot of Eurovision friends, and that's very, very good as well. And then in 2018, when Salvador won, I cried, of course I cried. And
we all did.
No, I really cried. It's like, okay, the world can end. Portugal won. I don't have any more dreams. This is not my joke, but it's a friend of Adolfo's joke. But when I arrived to Portugal, it's like, wait, you're in another TV station. You're not in RTP. So you will not be the host. And I was depressed for a long week. And then RTP was very kind, and they invited me and a colleague of mine, Pedro Panim, a great actor, to moderate the press conferences. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of, in the middle of that, they gave me the cherry on the top of the cake. It's like, do you want to host the red carpet, the blue carpet as well? And I was, oh my God, I'm so happy. And I remember was one of the most important moments in the Eurovision for me. It's like Pedro, the other Pedro that was working with me. He's also a big fan. And we gave a big hug, and I will never forget that. It's like we're living the dream. So it was really, really cool.
So, Pedro, can I ask you another question?
You can ask me everything. You're Isabel Campello.
Oh, just a little bit one. No, it relates to, well, a previous conversation that both of us had. Because as to my understanding, you've been accumulating a number of dreams related to the Eurovision Song Contest, right? You know, as a fan, then as a, going there, following the Eurovision Song Contest in the host cities and the countries. And then you became a commentator and eventually a moderator of the press conferences in the Eurovision in Lisbon. But you mentioned that once upon a time in your life, you had this dream of being the head of the delegation, right?
Yes. Because when I start working, it's like there are so many things that we can do, like the staging and the because I'm an actor, so I have the artistic side. But come on, now we have Carla Bugalho. That's the best head of delegation ever, and that's what I was saying. I would love to be, but she's better than me doing that, and she's a very good person, like. Yonola, Frank, ODBU, congratulate her when the Eurovision was in Lisbon. And I'm very, very proud to have this head of delegation. Carla, I love you. I would never steal your place because we could not have a better head of delegation than you. And I shouldn't say that.
In other words, if you would repeat the experience of at the Eurovision, which would be the function that you would like to
host?
Play?
The votes. The votes, translating in French. And I would love to, if the votes would go back, Pikachu English, to 8, 10, and 12, not just to 12. I missed the 8, 10, and 12. Me and a lot of fans, I think. Yeah. I would love to host. Of course, I would love to sing, but I don't have the voice for that. And I would love to win.
You never know.
But
you have to go to The Voice to see if you have the voice. Yeah.
No, I would go to the Idols because I hosted Idols, not the Voice.
Yeah, I know.
I would go to the
Idols. I'm aware, yes.
So Portuguese Idol, not the Voice. The Voice is a great show, of course.
Yeah, I agree.
No, it is.
Fraser, we are talking these different experiences of Eurovision, or being a fan traveling to Malmo, as we said in private for us, or doing part, a member of the delegation as a composer. Can you talk us a little bit about these different experiences of Eurovision? Because in all interviews that we ask this kind of stuff, people that are working in Eurovision told us about a bubble that live in a bubble and not experiencing the city so much that they want. So can you tell me these different perspectives of the same event?
Yeah, totally. I mean, from the fan perspective versus actually being there and being part of the delegation and having to give feedback and make sure things are perfect for the live show is a completely different experience. Whether I had a song in this year or not, I would have still been back as a fan because I'm now a fan. But if you figure just being in the bubble, you know, you've got 41 countries who are all in these in fluorescent lights. The energy is just like everyone's just running around like a chicken with their head cut off. There's walls and partitions, but you can hear the various countries singing at the top of their lungs. And what's really, really cool and really humbling about the whole experience is everyone is sitting in a different position in the odds. So there's people who are going in comfortably knowing that they are a fan and jury favorite. And there's people going in uncomfortably in the same situation, and just the level of stress that these artists who are also professional and just wanting, and delegations and everything, just wanting to bring their best to the table to represent their country. It's a very sort of high stress situation. From a fan perspective, you don't really get to see that. You know, it's fun and it's this and it's that, but I think everyone forgets that both semifinals and the final are sort of a 3-night thing that it takes a year, if not more, to put together. And so there's a lot of smoke and mirrors happening, but really the amount of work that goes into it is unreal. So it would almost have been interesting had I just showed up as a fan this year, just to be able to experience it from a non-work perspective, you know, and just be able to enjoy it. I mean, that didn't happen for anyone because none of us were able to go.
Exactly.
But that would definitely be an interesting sort of experience to witness. Yeah.
So let's just go to our social media talk. We have in our live chat several questions to our guests. So Nigmeira is asking, Pedro, do you want to take part to Eurovision as a lyricist besides of the other parts of presenting or commentating?
I would love to, but I'm very shy because no, it's like I'm an actor and I'm a TV host and I like to compose and I like to write and I do that for some artists. But yeah, maybe one day that will happen and Isabel Campello will sing.
Oh, yes,
no, I would love to do that, but my biggest dream in Eurovision would be to host.
So, but we have here
Portugal 12 points.
We have a kind of team here. We have a singer, a composer, a lyricist, and 3 dancers. So I don't know if someone from RTP are singers and will contract.
We have everything: love, peace. We just missed the fireworks and.
Yeah.
And another question that is repeatedly popping up here in the social media chat is how easy it is to get into this Eurovision world if you are a talented musician, you write your own songs and would like to contribute in some way. Is it just a coincidence if you know the right people, or are there other ways to enter this world?
It depends from country to country, I think.
I mean, I think
I'm not the best person. You are the best person to talk about.
I mean, I'm not either, only because I'm as new as I am. And I feel like because of my friendship with Laurel, that definitely kind of helped me get in.
How did she get inside? Do you know?
She went to a camp in Greece called Black Rock. And she just met some writers there, and just from staying in Europe and traveling from country to country to country, and being a talented writer and singer like she is, that just kind of helped her sort of get there. But when I was involved last year, I knew maybe writers from around 12 countries. So people are doing it, and everyone's just sort of has a different way. But I would say getting in touch with the heads of delegation would probably be a great networking. And like I've had my songs have been shortlisted for Cyprus and Malta 2 years in a row now. I don't personally know the heads of delegations, but I have friends who do and have networked their way in. So I think it's just
Maltese is very cool.
Yeah, because they accept outside songs from yeah. So yeah, I just think if you look at who writes the songs, it's kind of the same sort of players that have been involved year after year after year, like Anders Ratov and Dimitri, I think his name is. But there's kind of the same people that are involved. So even just hitting people like that up, and you know, if the song's good, it will speak for itself. What I think is so interesting about this year is a lot of the countries I think are gonna keep their artists for next year. So we already have some
think
sort
so? I don't know.
18, yes.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, I think at least maybe around half of them are.
Maybe.
At least
my favorite is not going. Iceland. Iceland was going to win finally. We already said it's not going next year.
Well, like I think like Victoria from Bulgaria, for instance, is coming back, and now we know she kind of likes the Billie Eilish sort of sound. So if she's going to represent her country, it would be in your best interest to write something in that vein, because then you already don't have to do any guessing work as to what she might be looking for next year. Alicia, we all know what kind of voice she has. So now if you wanted to write for Poland, you have a better gauge of the type of song you should present to a head of delegation and the TV station and, you know, the people. So, yeah.
So you mentioned the cancellation. So we were curious to know how you both experienced the cancellation, now postponement, let's say.
Postponement, exactly.
Yeah. How did you, what did you do? You know, how you felt when you heard, and then, you know, what did you do? Did you watch stuff online?
I said, damn it, it was going to be my 10th Eurovision in a row. So I was not very happy. And Iceland was going to win, so we would go to Reykjavik.
So what did you do instead, Pedro?
I watched with my friends, you know, and we voted, and Iceland won.
Did you watch Shine a Light?
They always make fun of me because I have one thing. Of course, this is among friends, not in real life. But I always say that Eurovision, it's from 1 to 10, because my 12 points always go to Spain because my grandmother was Spanish. And they are our neighbors. But okay, this is just a joke. Okay. And no, I was very sad because I really think that Iceland could have won. And they deserve to win for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, Siga maybe.
How about you, Fraser? How was it for you?
Personally speaking, I was just so grateful to even be able to do this 2 years in a row. So as upset as I was, I knew every other country was in the same position as I was. And to me personally, I just felt more so for, it's such a huge accomplishment as an artist to be selected to represent your country. So I felt more for the artists, and I guess, you know, the writers who have never had a shot at this before. This could have been just so huge for them. I was lucky enough to be part of it last year. So, you know, you can't just be too lucky all the time. But a friend of mine who's a big Eurovision fan, his name's Stuart Cameron. He was telling me 3 or 4 weeks before they announced it, he's like, this isn't going to happen. So I was able to process before the actual announcement was made. So I wasn't too disappointed. I think I was just more disappointed to not see familiar faces and just experience how amazing it was a second time. But there's always hopefully next year or the year after.
And we watched Wee Wee blogs because they do a great job. I love Wee Wee blogs.
Me too. Me too.
I really love. They really contribute a lot to the community. And when I was preparing my press conferences, they helped me a lot. I did a lot of research with their interviews and their work. So Wee Wee blogs,
So,
what up, Devin? What up, William?
So, but you know that there is some research about Eurovision, academic research. It's just a curiosity because such we do research about it. You as a composer and you, Pedro, as a professional of television.
Okay.
You know that there is a academic background of it, or?
Yeah, because Eurovision is history and is everything. So that what we were talking about that a while ago.
I thought it was so shocking. Like people are writing their theses on Eurovision. Like I was like, what? When yeah, you both of you. Okay.
No. I've already written my thesis about recording studios, so you see, it's not that far away. Now, there's a lot of academic work around popular music these days, fortunately.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's only the most listened to music in the world. So I mean, why not? It had to be done, right?
Yeah.
So, and why not Eurovision as well? Yeah. Well, you two gentlemen, we would like to thank you. But before
no, we really thank you. Thank you for, because it was really nice and having this conversation is really good.
I'm not wrapping it up yet. We want to know something before
3 minutes, bye.
Which is, what are your this is a question to both of you. Which expectations do you have, if any, for the Eurovision Song Contest 2021? Because we have a lot of expectations.
I've been going first, so now you go first.
Well, I expect for there to be a lot more love, I feel like, and just a lot more human understanding, and just for everyone to just sort of experience it after this unprecedented situation. It's almost like, you know, when the Twin Towers fell, I mean, not even like that, but you know, this commonality of that we all realized this was taken away from all of us. And so just that feeling of like, to be able to do it again all together, I just think 2021, if it does happen, will be a very, very special year.
Yeah, we don't know if it's going to happen.
Sorry,
I interrupted you. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I'll just expect the song caliber to be highest that it's ever seen, because people, I feel like, have more time now to really think and really make it count in 2021.
Yeah, but aren't you? May I ask you a question? Aren't you afraid that like the majority of the songs is going to be about this?
What's really interesting and sort of like prophetic was the song Empires by Alicia lyrically do kind of speak on sort of this, and we didn't know that at the time that we wrote it, but I mean, I do think that could end up happening. I mean, we don't want it to get too political and we want it to be still light and fun, but I do think music with a message is important too, so long as not all 41 countries do the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm a bit afraid that will happen, not the 40.
Well, I'll tell you what, I won't write that song.
Okay.
Okay, what about you, Pedro? What are your expectations regarding?
I was saying that I'm a bit afraid that it will be all about this that we are living, and of course it will be important to have songs about that, but we want songs about other things as well.
Of course. I don't know. I mean, I'm not so sure about that, because I think that at the end of the day, most people are very anxious to drop the subject, you know, because this was terrible for everybody, and of course for some countries.
It's been terrible.
It's been terrible, yeah. And I think that the general spirit from what the interviews that we heard so far is let's celebrate, you know, let's make a big celebration, and you know, and with joy and everything, and not so much to go into the COVID situation and pandemic situation again and again and again. Well, that's the impression I got. I don't know about my colleagues. What do you think?
Yeah.
We have to wait and see.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and it's very difficult to find rhymes with pandemic or COVID-19. So
we have to ask Rambo Amadeus. He will find.
Pandemic, systemic.
Problemic.
So, no, we have an idea for a song.
Isabel can sing it.
Why
Yeah.
not? Why not?
Isabel, sing a bit of one of the lots of songs. A little bit.
No, because I don't even remember the lyrics.
Oh, come on. Don't go, no, that's a lie. Because today you called me, or yesterday, I don't remember, and you started the call with the song.
Yeah, with Mama quer do campo, flor silvestre. This, okay, enough.
Isabel, thank you. You made my day.
Your night, mostly, yeah.
No, because it's
my day.
It's left sun.
Yeah.
It's late, but the sun is out.
Yeah.
Best
For
season
Fraser,
of the year.
it's very early. So.
Yeah, it's 2:20 p.m. So
Yeah.
Blame Canada, blame Canada.
I even wore my like Canadian
South
shirt
Park.
for everyone. But yeah.
So now that's the
Sorry?
moment we like silence.
Just following the
I think Irving is going to wrap it up.
Yeah,
Say thank
so
you to everyone.
because I see that in the live chat people are citing the full lyrics of the song. So
What?
there are many fans of Isabel online. At the
Really?
moment.
Thank you very much.
We love you, Isabel.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, what I have to say is now thank you
Yeah.
for
We thank you,
our
guys.
wonderful guests to be part of this roundtable discussion, and to all of you outside, stay here because Eurovision is not over yet. A good Eurovision show always lasts 3 hours. So
The songs always last 3 minutes.
So we will now go to our interval act. Again, a wonderful piece of music from our South Korean pianist Korjun, a very talented young guy who last year traveled the Netherlands to different train stations where in the Netherlands you can find pianos, and everyone is invited to play there, and he played a song that is very familiar to all of us. So enjoy our interval act with Korjun.
But we say goodbye to the people now, isn't it?
Bye bye.
Well, yes.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fraser. Thank you.
And
Pedro.
Eurovision is the best show in the world. And I know you from Eurovision.
Yeah, thank you, Korjun, for this wonderful interval act. And as I promised you, the Eurovisions Conference is far from being over because we still have a very interesting interview with one of the, I think, most controversial figures of this year's Eurovision, Alex Caillet from the group Hooverphonic, who refused to sing Love Shine a Light in the Europe Shine a Light show for very interesting reasons that he's going to explain in this interview. We are looking forward to learn them.
So our next guest we have in the grand final of our Eurovisions conference is Alex Caillet from the Belgian group Hooverphonic. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Caillet.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
So the first question, of course, when we're talking to an established artist like you, why Eurovision?
Oh, why? Because I'm a big fan of Eurovision since I was a kid. You know, I watch it every year, and I love the kind of, you know, like the competition. I like the contrast between sometimes, to be honest, sometimes it's kitsch, sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's very emotional, sometimes it's very funny. It's just, you know, it's an emotional kind of roller coaster, you know, like through the night. And of course, also, I love the tension at the end when the points are given, you know, like and especially lately with you know, the separate jury voting and the kind of tele voting, it makes it even more kind of like, you know, intense, I think.
I recall pretty well when Belgian television published that Hooverphonic is going to represent Belgium in Eurovision. So there was a big, oh, it's incredible, they're going to be part of Eurovision, because it has become quite rare that established artists are taking part in Eurovision. It's more, it has become for some countries more a showcase for casting show stars.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, competing on this level?
Well, to be honest, you know, we never thought too much about what people would think about us, or what we like to do. Sometimes things we like to do, and we try not to think too much about what other people want us to do. We just, you know, like I think it's a bit like, you know, like back in the days when The Voice started, you know, like they asked a lot of credible artists to be in the jury of The Voice, and a lot of people kind of refused. But I still remember I was with my best friend who lives in Holland, and in Holland there was already a big hit, that show, and he showed me a couple of, you know, like a couple of video clips, and I immediately loved it. And I'm just somebody, like, when I love something, when I really like feel something, I just do it, you know. I don't think too much about, like, you know, oh, I'm cool and I'm hip and I shouldn't do this or I shouldn't do that. It's more about, you know, like when I believe something is cool or when I really enjoy watching a show, I just think it's really, it's fun to be part of it. And, you know, like with Luca, our new singer, she's young and she definitely wanted to go, and Raymond wanted to go. So the three of us, we were all kind of together. We thought, like, this is the moment to do it. And also, you know, to be honest, I always said to the Belgian national television, I only want to do it if we have a proper song, you know, if we find a song. And normally our schedule is really hectic. It's very difficult to kind of, like, you know, make our agenda kind of like, you know, free for such a long time, because you need to be like 2 weeks at Eurovision. So for us, that's a lot. And this year, for some kind of, yeah, it was magic. Suddenly we had a little bit of time. We had the time. We were touring right before, and we would start touring right after. But just in May, we had the time to do it. So it was just kind of, you know, that made us kind of like, convinced us to do it. We had the song, we had the time, and the three of us felt like, you know, we wanted to have fun and do it, you know.
So how did it work exactly? So Belgian television approached you already in the past, and now you said, oh, now we have time, or did they ask you this year and it was just a coincidence?
No, they asked us already a couple of times, and twice we refused because we felt we didn't have the song, or we were touring and we didn't have the time. And I still remember, you know, like it was in, I think it was in summer 19, we were actually at the seaside in Belgium for a radio show. And after the show, we were talking to some people from television that we know very well through the years. Of course, we're doing this for 25 years, so we know these people quite well. And they were asking us again. And I said, like, well, you know, I say no, unless I have the proper song. But tell you what, if I write a song, I'll give you guys a call, and then we'll see, you know, if we have time. And so a year later, I wrote this song with my good friend Luca Chiaravalli. And we thought, like, great, this could be the song. So if I promise something, I do it. So I gave him a call. I said, like, okay, I think we have the song. Let's see if we can make our agendas, you know, like work. And that worked as well. So that's how we finally agreed on doing it. But the song that we kind of agreed on eventually we didn't use that song, actually. It was kind of for us, it was like of course, you know, I love ABBA and you know, like, so it was my homage to ABBA, you know, kind of. And so that was the song. But then after that, my dad died, and I wrote a song about saying goodbye to him, and then Luca fell in love with that song, and so we changed the song, actually. So a lot of people in Belgium now say, like, so next year we already have the song because it's already there. And then we say, like, you never know with us, you know, because in lockdown you can write a lot of songs.
Mm. Yeah, but it's exactly this point that is interesting, because you wrote a song that was so deeply coming from your heart, with personal emotions and related to your own life. And then the cancellation of Eurovision came, and you cannot showcase this song to a broad European audience. How do you feel as an artist?
It's a shame, of course, you know, like, and definitely when after Eurostream, when we saw we became 5th and even 2nd in the tele voting, it was a shame, of course. And everybody at the Belgian television as well said, like, damn, man, you know, you were 2nd in the tele voting, you know, with a good light show and good, you know, we could have maybe ended up top 3. And I said, like, you know, in life, I'm quite easy. I'm thinking, like, okay, if it's not meant to be this year, it's gonna be next year. It's, you know, like, a lot of people release me. Next year we do something else. I try not to think too much about it. The first thing when I heard they canceled Eurovision, the first thing I was thinking of was, oh no, the whole summer's gonna be canceled. That's all the festivals, all the shows, and that's for our crew and our musicians. It's a disaster, you know. We can still survive, you know. We've been doing this for 25 years. We have some backup, you know. But you know, for a lot of people surrounding us, like, playing live is just, it's their income, it's their life. So when they canceled Eurovision, it kind of, to me, became clear that they would cancel a lot of shows. And then eventually, a couple of weeks later, they canceled the whole year, actually. So I see a lot of my friends now who have financial problems, have, like, you know, really difficult time sleeping. And that for me is really sad, you know, like, of course, you know, like, we would have loved to go to Rotterdam and be there. We were really looking forward to it. But in the end, the impact was way bigger than even bigger than that, you know. It's not only Eurovision. Eurovision we did for fun and for our country, and, you know, like, and of course we were doing, like, we gave 200%, you know. But we'll do it next year, you know, and we'll make sure that we're gonna have another good song, and we see it as a challenge. But, you know, a lot of friends having, you know, financial problems, that is really bad, you know. It's like, and I feel, you know, I do this 25 years. I really feel it's a family, you know, like, being on the road, being on a tour bus. It's like, you know, you feel responsible, you know, like, I'm kind of the musical director of this band, and you feel responsible for your crew, for all the people. But also with Eurovision, it's the same, you know. A lot of people, depending on the work they do for Eurovision. It's like, you know, all the people working at Ahoy, the technical crew. It's a lot of people involved behind the scenes that now don't have any work. So yeah, it's thank you very much, Corona. You know, like I would have loved to see it differently. You know.
So as you describe it, it seems like Eurovision does not have such a big impact in commercial terms on the selling figures of your songs.
It does, you know. Of course it does. It's like, you know, when after the Eurostream and after the kind of alternative show, you see, of course, that your Spotify and Apple Music plays go up. You see that the Shazam plays go up. I think in our case it went up 300% or something. But in the long run, you know, like I think Eurovision can, of course, you know, bring you closer to a different audience. You know, we have already a quite cool following, but of course it can make your following bigger. But in the end, you know, we see that when we're on the road, you have a lot of people who come to our shows already for years and years. So it would have made it makes an impact, but for us, of course, less than I think for a beginning artist or something, because we're all, like you said in the beginning, we're already quite established. To be honest, I tend not to think too much about the economical impact of Eurovision. For me, it's just fun to be there and to hear all this music. And what I love about it is that you see all these different countries have different flavors, different influences. For instance, what's really strange is that, you know, the countries this year that I really liked, most of the time in these countries were quite popular, like, you know, Romania, Russia, Italy. That were the songs that I really enjoyed watching myself, you know. And then Ukraine as well, and then you see that it's countries where when we tour we have a lot of crowds coming to see our shows. So there is some kind of connection, like an artistic connection, and that's just fun to see, you know. Like and I love this kind of all these different kind of cultural flavors in the show. I just enjoy that, you know. It's also one thing why I enjoy touring that much. I love to be on the road and meeting people and meeting different people and eating different food, and, you know, like and 25 years ago also different clothes, but nowadays with all the big chains it's all the same clothes. That's a pity.
So being part of the Eurovision means also to be part of the fan community, and the fan community is really demanding. So how does it feel? Because normally when you release an album, of course, there are critics and talking about the album and about the songs. And now everything is focused on just one song, and everybody's discussing the quality and the capacities of winning. And so how does it feel to you?
I was quite, it was quite new for me, to be honest, because I watch the show every year, but I'm not the kind of guy who's like online watching everything. Most of the time I just go to Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, and I just listen to all the songs once, you know, and then I make up with my friends, like we say, like, oh, we love that song. So but, you know, there's like a whole world that opened up for me, like doing this. Suddenly you see all these people with their online reviews, and that was, for me, was new, you know, like, and that was also the reason why when they announced that it would be canceled, that I immediately said to the band, oh, we're going to have to write another song. And I said, like, why? I said, like, well, part of the charm of the festival is releasing these tracks and then all the people writing their reviews or making these online movies about the tracks. And that's like, you know, 30% of the charm of the festival. I think a lot of people just enjoy making these reviews, and people love watching them. So I gotta say, you know, like I really enjoyed it, being this close to see how many people are really, like, you know, like quite passionate about it, you know, like that's probably the word. And to be honest, you know, some people say we love it, other people say, but I don't mind that, you know, like in Belgium, for instance, in our own country, you know, the song got, you know, like mediocre reviews, you know, and people say like, oh, this is not what I first think is really strange, is that here in Belgium people say like, oh, this song is not for Eurovision. And then I always ask them, but what do you think a song should be? Is there some kind of format it needs to be? You know, look at Salvador Sobral, you know, that's completely out of the format and it won, you know. Look at Duncan Lawrence, it was a very modern pop song and it won. So like you guys are too stuck, you know, you have to be more open-minded. Eurovision is more open-minded than just like the typical kind of four on the floor dance kind of like, you know, track. Sometimes that wins, but not all the time. So, and then we started traveling because we were still touring, and outside our country, everybody loved the song. It's like, fantastic song, great. So you immediately see these big differences between your own people, the other fans outside of your country. And in the end, you know, like I try not to look too much online because of course there's a lot of people making reviews, but in the end, 100 million people watch it. So what is like, even if it's like 50,000 people doing that, and it's not that much even, you know, like, but even if it would be 50,000 people, it's not representing the whole crowd watching the show, you know. And so, for instance, for example, you know, I said beforehand that some people think Eurovision is a circus of bad taste, you know. That immediately became like, he said he thinks Eurovision is a circus of bad taste. That went, immediately you had like all these people, you know, bashing me online. And still we became on Eurostream, which is a lot of people that are really like into Eurovision, you know, people watching that show. They voted us second. So it shows that there's too many people watching the show, that these reviews are just, they're not representing the whole kind of like, you know, the feel of the whole crowd. So I try to stay as close to my own heart and try to do something I really strongly believe in, and try not too much to look what people write online or what they do online, you know, like it's very dangerous, you know, and it could also affect you in a bad way, you know.
Mm. So in fact, you're just following your path, and you have your convictions. But on the other hand, people blame you for some of your all the things that you say because of your convictions. Does it? You say you don't care, but I think, and I know that some fans are really can be very verbal about their negative feelings. So what experience did you have in this period, and why do you think that your citations have been scandalized so much in the fan community?
Well, you know, I think I'm doing this already a long time, 25 years, you know. We've seen internet growing, you know. When we started to tour, we didn't even have cell phones with us, you know. So we saw how it came, and when at first on our website we had like this kind of, you know, like chat rooms, and you know, those things are a long time gone. It's like history, but there you learn, there you need to kind of like, you know, at some point keep a distance from all these opinions, you know. You learn that if you get involved into that kind of negative stream, it will affect you in a bad way. And what I've learned through the years is that there's maybe 3,000 people bashing me, but there's maybe 20,000 people who love what I do or what I say, but those people mostly don't tend to write something online. They are busy with other stuff. They say like, oh, well done, but they don't feel like, you know, we're gonna write something. So it's very dangerous to read these opinions online, you know. Like I think, you know, and like the televoting on Eurostream has proven that, you know, like we became second. So, and I said like, well, you know, people thought I said that Eurovision is a circus of bad taste. So, and so, you know, because I do this a long time, I know where I should focus on and what I should just try to ignore. And that negative energy, I try to ignore that in life. It's never gonna help me. It's no good negative energy, you know. So I try to see everything positive, you know. So we didn't want to sing along with Katrina and the Waves, you know, like because I don't believe in that, you know. It's not my world. It's not what I believe in. I really am very thankful to all the people, you know, like that are putting their lives on the line every day in hospitals. But I think, you know, singing, you know, Love Shine a Light, it's too cheesy. And I don't like that cheesiness in really very very serious things, you know. It's just, for me, it feels wrong. So, you know, we decided not to do that. And then, of course, you know, you're going to get bashed. But at the same time, next year, people will know who Hooverphonic is, you know? So it's like, you know, there's no such thing as bad publicity. That's like, it's a cliche, but it is what it is. And I just think, I'm not a politician, I'm a musician, you know. I shouldn't do politics. I shouldn't be thinking about, oh, if I'm not gonna do this, then I'm gonna be bashed, and then probably we won't get points from that country next year. That's really wrong, you know. You should do what your heart tells you to do. You should follow your gut, you know, even though sometimes that's the most difficult way. And believe me, after that Twitter storm, I didn't sleep well, you know. It's not that I'm not hurt. Of course I'm hurt, but you know, like at the same time, sometimes as an artist, you need to take the difficult road, not the easy road. The easy road would have been like sing 2 lines of the song and then, you know, nobody would have noticed and whatever. But that, it's not my belief, you know, to do that. And I never accepted, you know, like taking part in a Katarina and a Wave. So I wanted to go to Eurovision with my song, my production, my you know, like that's what I wanted to do. Of course, because of Corona, things got out of hand or something. But it's not because, you know, like Corona changed our lives that I should change my beliefs, you know. That's and you know, like we were in the program because I really wanted to support all the people, you know, like doing that, but I didn't want to be part of the song because I really, it's too far for me from what we do. And to be honest, you know, like it's something that's gonna be online a long time. I'm gonna have to watch it too long, you know, and every time I'm gonna think, oh no, you know, did we really do that? I'm too old for that. I can't do that anymore. It's, you know, like, and if people don't like that, well, they don't like it. But I meet a lot of people who tell me like, man, that was really well done. That's really like, you know, like stick to your artistic kind of like, you know, integrity, you know, like more people should do that. And like I said, I'm not a politician. I'm an artist.
Mm. Well, it should be part of our lives to be able to choose and not to be forced to do things. Do you feel that Eurovision somehow, due to these, let's say, mechanisms, to the pressure of fans, of the public, is kind of a corset for an artist?
But I gotta say, you know, like for me, it's difficult to give an objective reply because, you know, because we are Hooverphonic and because I do what I do already for a long time. The VRT, Belgian National Television, respected my decision, and also the EBU respected my decision. You know, were they happy? No, they were not, but they respected me, and they said like, okay, if that's the way you feel, it's gonna be that way. So for me, you know, to be honest, I can't complain about the EBU and about Eurovision. You know, like they respected my beliefs. So, but I'm not sure if I would be a beginning artist, if it would be the same. You should ask a beginning artist, you know, like it's also something I think you learn, you know, through the years. It's something, you know, I'm a strong kind of person, so I can cope with this. So, but I gotta say, you know, everybody behind the scenes was very, very cool about it. So I can't complain about it. Definitely not.
I see. So respect is a good key. So one of your composer colleagues, Boris Milanov, who also wrote the German entry, he complained that the EBU is not respecting the work of the composers because they don't accept the songs that have been chosen for Eurovision 2020 in next year's edition. Do you agree with him somehow, or can you understand what he feels?
I don't agree with him. Like I said earlier on, I think, you know, like part of the charm of the show is kind of the songs that like, you know, get released one after the other. It's like you build a tension, you build like, you know, like some kind of, it's an adventure, you know, the whole trip, not only the show itself, you know, the 3 nights, you know, like the 2 semifinals and the finals, but also, you know, like the whole trip to Eurovision, you know, like is very important. And so I think, it's normal that they ask different songs. Of course, I can't complain because immediately the VRT said to us, okay, next year you're going anyway. So for me, it's easy to say, of course, I will go next year with another song. Like I said, I try to always find positive kind of things in negative things. So in this case, we get like publicity twice. We got publicity for Release Me. Next year, I'm going to get publicity for another single. Is it fun that there's Corona? No. Is it fun that I got canceled? No. But hey, in the end, I got 2 times a song that gets promotion. At least it's something, so that's how I try to live. I always try to kind of, if a singer leaves the band, I'm in distress, but then after a couple of weeks, I think, okay, the chapter is done, but the chapter is over, but the book is still not written. We need to proceed. And then I see it as a challenge to look for somebody else and to try to make more beautiful music. So I always try to make the best of it. So in this case, I can see, I like the German song, and I can see it. There's a lot of work that goes into that song and in the production and the writing, and then suddenly seeing that it's not used, of course it's a pity. But you also are participating in Eurovision, and you need to kind of accept it. You're part of a bigger thing. It's like when you're writing music for yourself or a band, or you're going to start composing for movies. When you suddenly become a movie composer, suddenly there's a director and there's a producer, and suddenly there's other people deciding for you. If you're gonna do that, if you're gonna start working for movies, well, that you're gonna kind of like get rid of a little bit of the control. In this case, it's the same. When you participate in Eurovision, you're gonna lose a little bit of control. I try not to lose too much control, but it's gonna be like that. If you don't like it, don't participate. I think it's a television show. Even to when I was a coach, I did 4 seasons of The Voice in Belgium. The first thing I always said to my talents was like, so you can sing, so what? Give me 10 songs with good singers, 10 crappy songs with good singers that became hits. And then they were like, and then you ask, give me 10 crappy singers with fantastic songs that became hits, and then you can start, like New Order, like Blue Monday. The guy can't sing. It's still like a dance floor filler, like it's, so that I always tell them like, hey man, you're participating in a television show. It's only television. It is television. It's a show, it's entertainment. Eurovision is entertainment. So I can be the one saying like, like I have my artistic integrity and I will do everything for it. But in the end, I know that I'm participating in an entertainment show. So I also know an entertainment show should be entertaining. And what's the entertaining part for me in Eurovision is the clash between, like, for instance, this year, the Russia song, our song. It's like 2 worlds that are completely on the other side of the spectrum. You have something really dancey, up, very funny, and then a song written about someone's dad dying, But it all fits in that one show, and it's these contrasts that I love, I love the fact that sometimes I think like, oh, this is really crap. And then, 2 songs later, you think like, wow. I still remember Salvador Sobral, for me, was one of the most magic moments when he performed. I said like, what is this? This is fantastic. This should win, So it's like, it's that contrast. And that's also what I try to say. And that's the problem with media these days. Everything needs to be fast. So I'm talking to you already for quite some time. You can cut bits and pieces from what I say, and you can let me say something completely different, like I went to film school, so I know how it works, That's the first lesson we got was, was Eisenstein, like, and he made a movie with all clips, from different people, and he made a story about like a battleship that kind of like, is going down, and people in panic, and if you watch it, you really believe it, So I know that it's very difficult these days to explain to your opinion, because everything needs to be in short phrases, and that's really difficult for me, as you can see, like I can't talk in short phrases.
This is why we don't cut. We will show the full interview. And
but the problem is, when I say, you know, like on radio, on Belgian radio, like, well, you know, like some people think it's a circus of bad taste, you know, and then I said after that, I said like, well, you know, I can understand that, but it's in that circus that sometimes, you know, you hear really beautiful songs. Sometimes you hear very kitschy songs. Sometimes they're kitsch and they're cool. Sometimes they're kitsch and you don't like them. But the cool thing is that on the other side of Europe, probably a guy thinks completely different than you think, you know, like it's like he will think like about Salvador Sobral, oh, boring, you know, like, and he will love whatever, you know. So it's that contrast that just makes this show really fun to watch, you know. There's nothing wrong with having different tastes, you know. And on the contrary, that's interesting about being human, isn't it? You know, that we have different tastes, you know.
Definitely, but don't you feel that Eurovision has become too much a show for singers and not about composers anymore?
You know, if what I said that in interviews before, what I miss the most is that, you know, the live orchestra for us would be great. You know, I still remember as a kid when I watched it, you had that one band, one orchestra, and you had like a conductor that you could bring and a singer, and that was it. Everybody had the same tools, and with the same tools you had to win. That of course was also charming, you know. It was really fun, you know, to see that it was the same band playing the whole night, same orchestra, but just the conductor and the singer were like changing, and still every song was really different. And it was all about the composer, actually. It wasn't about the singer, it was about who wrote the song. But of course, you know, times are changing, you know. I could be very melancholic about how vinyl is so much better. But I listen every day to streaming services, you know. I'm in my car, I'm in my kitchen cooking, you know. I put on Apple Music or Spotify or Deezer or Qobuz. I have them all because I wanted to check all the different sounds. And you know, I'm a geek. I admit it. I'm a geek. But you know, like, we have to evolve, you know. You can fight something, you can fight evolution, but you will never win. You can fight, you know, technical evolution, but you will never win. So you have to learn to adapt, you know. It's how it is. So I can be melancholic about the orchestra not being there, but hey, you know, like, it's a challenge to do something with the acts and try to incorporate something that kind of gives you the feel of an orchestra without a real orchestra being there, you know, like. Oh, sorry, that's my dog. Shows. There's like, you know, it's my dog. And the trouble with the dog is that, you know, whenever I play piano, she starts howling. So I can't play piano when she's around, you know. But yeah, I'm not sure what it is. At first I thought she was afraid, but her tail is always going. So I think she's actually like, you know, doing auditions for Hooverphonic when I play piano. She tries to become singer of the band, you know. So maybe
I see. So you already have plans for next year, I see.
Yeah. We bring Josephine, our dog, with us, you know, as a as a backing vocalist.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing all these interesting insights with us, Mr.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
We're looking forward to seeing you in Rotterdam next year with
definitely
beautiful song. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye. Ciao.
Bye.
So we just finished our last interview of this Eurovision's International Conference of this year in the very different format that we had in the last 2 years. So in these all interviews that we had in the last 3 days, and also in the roundtables, there are many interesting topics that we could find. So to do the traditional wrap-up of our talks, we can see the enthusiasm of people with this perspective of a new Eurovision in Rotterdam next year. People ended all talks with this positive message that we are all expecting this new show in Rotterdam. We don't know in which format, we don't know if we can travel there, but this idea of continuing the circle of Eurovision, this annual schedule of having new songs and national selections, and this all anxious way of expecting these new songs. Maybe it's one of the big idea of people, even they are professionals or they are fans or they are academics. We are all expecting that these dynamics of Eurovision continue. We don't know in which format, we don't know what we can expect, but we are sure that many people are working to manage it. So for me, it's one of the big ideas is to heal this post-Eurovision, postponement depression. So we are anxious to find you all in Rotterdam next year. So.
Okay, and I also thought that one of the main ideas that remained from most of the interviews that we listened to, particularly the interviews that were with the people more actively involved in the organization of the next Eurovision Song Contest, is that considering all scenarios possible, but these people, particularly the people from the reference group, are deeply engaged in having a Eurovision Song Contest in 2021. And also the people from Rotterdam are really engaged in making the city, well, a very special background for this event. So this, for me, was one of the main ideas that remain of most of the talks with the people that we interviewed. So I pass it on to Carla.
Thank you, Isabel. And I'll actually pick up on that topic of Rotterdam and the ESC as a city event, because I thought the issue of participation that was highlighted by the guests we had from Rotterdam is really important. So they were really trying to bring, you know, the city, the cultural agents to participate in the ESC as a city event. And obviously this connects also with city branding. So I really think it's an important thing to highlight that the Eurovision Song Contest can be obviously a way to brand the, I'm really sorry, can be a way to brand the city to audiences worldwide, but at the same time is also a way in which the people that are resident in the city can participate, and it's a way for everyone to engage. So this focus on participation, on access, I think is also a really important aspect to highlight. Of course, many of us are only aware of the ESC as a televised event, as a TV show, but it's important, and this was highlighted throughout our different interviews, the ESC also as a city event. So I just wanted to end by saying thank you to all of you that watched and will be watching the stream that will be available. Now my colleague Irving will wrap up our conference of this year.
Yeah, this conference was a very interesting one because, of course, it took place under very unconventional circumstances. So what I saw in all these interviews was the deep hope that the idea behind the Eurovision Song Contest, which is the idea behind Europe, will still be alive next year, even though the COVID-19 crisis in some aspects has shown that national egoisms have been risen again. But all the people who took part in this conference, they are hard working to keep this idea alive. And I think that also the Eurovisions International Conference is taking part in this effort, showing how these people work, giving you some ideas to think, to reflect on them. And we are all looking forward to see you, hopefully live, next year in 2021 in Rotterdam for the next Eurovisions International Conference. We have prepared very interesting topics and we're very curious if we can realize them as we wish. So thank you for being with us for 3 exciting, interesting and long days. We wish you a good night, a wonderful Pentecost, and yeah, see you soon. Bye-bye.
See you in
Bye.
Rotterdam.
Thank you. See you in Rotterdam. Definitely.